A man on the threshold of death. The year is 323 BC, and Alexander the Great, the young conqueror, is on the verge of death in Babylon. At only 32 years old, he has achieved the unthinkable, conquering from Greece to the heart of Persia, even reaching India. But his body, exhausted by battles and travels, succumbs to a mysterious fever. For days, his army and his people expect the worst. They mourn as they imagine a world without their leader, the one who seemed unbeatable. In a dark, incense-scented room, doctors strive to treat him, but all seems in vain. However, on the seventh day, Alexander wakes up. Against all odds, he regains his strength. When he opens his eyes, he feels a renewed energy that fills him with determination. Alexander firmly believes that the gods have granted him a second chance, a sign to not only conquer, but to change the course of history itself. With his health restored, Alexander resumes his ambitious dream, to unify the entire known world under one ruler. Chapter 1. The Dream of Conquering the West. After recovering, Alexander assesses his situation. The East is relatively pacified, but one territory remains a challenge: the West. Determined to conquer the entire Mediterranean, Alexander turns his attention to the Iberian Peninsula and North Africa, where the Phoenicians and Celtic peoples still resist the power of Macedonia. Alexander deploys his army westward, and his first stop is Carthage, a naval power dominating the western Mediterranean. The war with Carthage is brutal and protracted, as their armies are well-trained and their navy is superior. Alexander, shrewd as ever, uses scorched earth tactics and constant sieges, cutting off Carthaginian supply routes and taking advantage of the strength of his infantry. After several years of campaigning, Carthage finally surrenders. Alexander establishes a solid base in North Africa, and Carthage becomes just another province in his vast empire. From here, Alexander moves on to the Iberian Peninsula. In an epic confrontation with the Celts and local tribes, Alexander uses a divide-and-conquer strategy. Through alliances and decisive battles, his army defeats the Celtic peoples. Finally, he reaches the shores of the Atlantic, and the Mediterranean becomes what would later be called Mare Nostrum, or RC. Chapter 2. Alexander's Great Library. Consolidated in the West, Alexander understands that such a vast empire cannot be maintained by military force alone. He needs a center of knowledge and culture that unifies the different civilizations under his command. So in the city of Babylon, he decides to build what would be the largest and most advanced library in the ancient world, the Great Library of Alexander. Alexander invites the most brilliant scholars from Greece, Persia, Egypt, India, and other conquered territories to gather in Babylon. There, these scholars founded what would become known as the Universal Academy. Here, mathematicians, philosophers, physicians, and astronomers share and develop knowledge. The library houses sacred texts from all cultures, scientific treatises, poetry, and detailed maps of the known world. Alexander, fascinated by the power of knowledge, understands that his legacy will not only be based on battles won, but on the knowledge and culture he will leave to the world. In addition, the library becomes a meeting place where ideas mingle, and debates begin on topics such as morality, politics, and the nature of the universe. Alexander, who loves to learn, devotes part of his time to study and debate with the wise men. In time, rumors begin to circulate about unknown lands to the north and east, beyond what was thought possible. These tales awaken in Alexander a new desire to discover and understand these territories, and, if possible, to join them to his empire as well. Chapter 3. The Alliance with Rome. As Alexander watches his library and influence grow, a new power emerges in the West: Rome. Alexander knows that the Romans are fierce warriors, and understands that engaging them in battle would be costly to his empire. Rather than make Rome an enemy, Alexander decides to offer them a strategic alliance. He sends his top diplomat to Rome, who brings with him a tempting proposal. If Rome joins Alexander in a peace pact, he will share the knowledge of the Great Library and provide military support when needed. Rome accepts, impressed by Alexander's power and worldview. This pact marks the beginning of an era of prosperity. With the help of the Romans, Alexander builds a vast network of roads and trade routes connecting the cities of his empire. This system, known as Via Magna, becomes the main artery of trade, culture, and communication. Territories that were once divided are now interconnected. From Greece to Egypt and from Babylon to the Iberian Peninsula, Alexander's empire is unified by a solid infrastructure and an administration that fosters peace and development. Chapter 4: The Last Campaign to China. Alexander knows that to fulfill his dream of a united world, he must extend his empire to the far reaches of the Asian continent. The lands of East Asia, particularly China, represent the last great frontier. Although he has never seen these lands, he has heard stories of the wealth and power of the Chinese dynasties. So, together with his Roman allies and a coalition of armies from various regions, Alexander sets out on his last great campaign to the east. The armies cross the Himalayas, facing harsh climates and unknown territories. The journey is epic and exhausting, but Alexander's army keeps moving forward. Finally, they reach the borders of China, where they are met by the armies of the Qin dynasty. Instead of a bloody war, both leaders recognize the strength of their enemy and opt to negotiate. Alexander proposes a peace and trade pact. China's territories will retain their independence, but trade routes will be opened for the exchange of goods and ideas. This decision not only avoids a brutal conflict, but establishes the first significant cultural exchange between East and West. Chapter 5: The Empire of Peace and Knowledge. Alexander's last years are peaceful. He retires to Babylon, where he administers his empire and oversees the running of the library and the academy. The territories under his command prosper as never before. Thanks to trade and routes of knowledge, cities flourish and culture is enriched. Greek scholars, Persian mathematicians, Indian physicians and Chinese astronomers work together on life-changing discoveries in the empire. In this peaceful environment, Alexander becomes more than a king. He is an almost mythical figure, a living inspiration to his people. His empire becomes a symbol of unity and prosperity, and Alexander's great library continues to grow, accumulating the knowledge of all civilizations. Alexander dedicates his life to consolidating the empire, establishing systems of education and promoting cultural integration. The ideas of freedom and justice are taught in every corner of the empire, and the peace he has achieved endures even after his death. Future generations will remember him not only as the great conqueror, but as the man who united the world and left a legacy of wisdom.